Welcome, everyone. My name is Adriana Machado. I'm the founder of the BRIA Institute, a benefit corporation based in the US that bridges innovation, practice, and purpose to inspire leaders, to transform organizations, and create an impact economy. And what do I mean by impact economy? That which pursues financial returns alongside positive impact for people and planet. So it's possible. BRIA is just one example of that, and we can make business a force for good. So that's why we're gathered here together for this 14th webinar of the BRIA Institute. This is the 6th of the series, The Era of Leadership. I believe that this is the time right now for us all to embrace our unique leadership journeys wherever we are. The mindset that I'm inviting you to cherish is that of questioning what is, and allowing us to individually and collectively continue to evolve, raise our consciousness, create new narratives, new worldviews, regenerate instead of degenerate, promote positive impact in our organizations, in our society, in our planet. And I propose that we do so by shifting the way we think, going from linear and fragmented to more interconnected and systemic. And in order to do so, let's address a very important topic today, which is E.S.G, that stands for Environment, Social, and Governance in a very inspiring way. So this is a topic that has been driving a lot of attention recently, mainly from investors of big companies and startups, but also from consumers who are becoming more aware of the need to really do something about it, and are constantly demanding more positive impact from organizations and from companies. And we have two wonderful companies to listen to today. So I'm very pleased and honored to be joined today by two great friends, so Marcela Porto and John Friedman. So let me start by welcoming our guests. Marcela is the head of communications and brand at Suzano, the world's leading eucalyptus pulp producer. Her professional experience was built in complex context, navigating from the public to the private sector. She started out as a public policy consultant, migrated to the corporate world through government relations, embraced sustainability and family business, and today she leads the comms, branding, and reputation efforts at one of Brazil's largest companies. Over the last 20 years, she managed to gather people and resources around large projects, helping to develop brands, leaders, and teams, always connecting results and purpose and building the bridges to promote positive impact. Beautiful trajectory, Marcela. It's a pleasure to have you with us. John, we go a long way working together at GE, and it's always a pleasure to have you. We had you early this year, and now it's the second time this year, so I am so honored. John Friedman is the Senior Vice President and Senior Vice President, Global Government Affairs at Suez, North America. John Friedman is based in Washington, D.C., where he leads the global government affairs and policy for the multi-billion-dollar Suez Water Technologies and Solutions and Suez North America. He is also the Suez Group representative to the World Bank and other multilateral organizations in the U.S. Before taking on the government affairs roles, he was a director at GE's Corporate Marketing Initiatives Group, where he reported to GE's Chief Marketing Officer, and he helped lead the creation of GE's global environmental sustainability initiative called Eco-Imagination, a very systemic initiative, I must say. So John originally joined GE as a global business development leader with GE Energy, where he helped GE create a global water business by initiating and leading acquisitions of listed companies. And he is also on the faculty of the University of Pennsylvania, where he teaches graduate courses on water, energy, and sustainability. He also serves on alumni and corporate advisory boards for the Wharton School. So amazing work, John, throughout your journey. And I am sure you're doing amazing things at Suez as well. So thank you, both of you, to be here and to have this conversation. So this is very informal, you guys. We're going to be asking questions, and feel free to use the chat to also ask questions to our participants. I always like to start with a very meaningful question. So let's start with the why. Why does ESG matter for Suez and Suzano. How has the company's journeys around the topic been, and starting even before this increased attention with ESG, and now it's in the radar of everybody? So I'll start with John. John, please enlighten us and welcome.
First of all, Drea, I want to thank you for having me. You're a great colleague at GE, and you remain a good friend today. I just want to apologize for making you read such a long introduction. I should have edited it down for you. And Marcella, it's so nice to meet you virtually, and I can't wait to meet in person sometime. You know, Dre, when we were at GE, you mentioned one of the things I worked on was helping to lead the creation of GE's first ever global sustainability initiative. And after it was launched, they branded it Eco-Imagination. You know, that was in 2004 and 2005. And I think ESG was still in the early innings. You know, it was a kind of a developing area. And I remember at GE when we said, well, let's go see what other major corporations are doing so we can benchmark ourselves against them and figure out what to do. And we couldn't find that many other examples of formal corporate programs. But I think it's night and day since then. The world has changed. I think, you know, in 2015, when there was COP21 in Paris, and then in 2016, 196 states signed the Paris Climate Agreement. Kind of a light switch went off globally. And now we have a lot more, I'd say, very formal, regimented corporate sustainability kind of ESG programs, right? GE itself, Dre, was much more an industrial company than Suez. So GE, you know, it made gas turbines, still does, gas turbines and jet engines and locomotives. I'm not saying GE doesn't provide services, it does, but kind of its inception was based around these big industrial types of equipment. And so for GE, when it kind of decided to do a sustainability initiative, it was kind of a new thing. It was like, well, let's figure out how we fit in, how we can make an impact. Suez is very different. Suez was formed in the mid-1800s. It was an engineering and construction company. I think its most famous project, even to this day, was when it completed the Suez Canal in 1869. And it decided to rebrand itself. It decided to call itself Company de Suez going forward. And, you know, as the world developed more and more and industrialized, and in the 1880s, when the Industrial Revolution was really beginning to take off and people were gathering in cities, Suez decided to focus on water and wastewater, and it built some of the world's first water and wastewater treatment plants. So at its very inception, it's a company focused on human health and hygiene, and it's really continued in that path even to today. So I think Suez, you know, GE's journey started probably in the early 2000s, and Suez's journey started in the 1880s. So I'll just, with that, turn it back to you, Drew.
And just to complement, I found this in the website, and I was telling you earlier, but I want all of our audience to know that this is amazing. So in 2019, Suez wrote that motivated by a passion for the environment, the 90,000 Suez employees are committed to inventing disruptive solutions to preserve and restore the fundamental elements of the environment: water, air, and soil. So this is amazing that you're there, John, and doing this great work. And I hope Suez continues to work 150 more years helping us regenerate, because I truly believe that we aren't in a worse situation in our cities and in our world, because we have had technology brought to also help us with sanitation and water use and reuse. So thank you. Marcela, how about you?
Well, Adri, first, thank you very much. It's a huge honor actually to be here with you and John and talking about one of the most relevant agendas nowadays. So huge pleasure. Thank you very much. Talking a little bit about Suzano, we're not such a famous company yet. but we're the world's leading eucalyptus pulp producer, as you said, and also one of the largest paper producers globally. We are almost 100 years old and always reinventing ourselves, just like a startup. So that's what I love about working here. Today, we play a role in the lives of over 2 billion people worldwide through either our products or our clients' products that we sell in over 100 countries. So to start with why, as you said, our why is our reason to exist, and we call that our purpose. And in Suzano, we're guided by the purpose of renewing life inspired by trees. Our way of doing it is by developing sustainable and innovative solutions from eucalyptus trees, which is a renewable resource. So we plant every day over 500,000 trees, and we harvest them every 5 to 7 years after that, and we replant them in the same area. So that means that sustainability in our forest management is paramount. We understand, though, that agriculture and nature, they must be integrated. So we manage our eucalyptus farms in a mosaic technique, and that allows for the conservation of native forests to coexist in a proportion of 40% of our land. So what happens is that the fragments of native areas are interconnected so that biodiversity has multiple ways of thriving. And to give you an idea of the size of these areas, we are talking about over 1 million hectares of land dedicated to conservation, and that's around 12 times the size of the city of New York. So it's pretty big. It's not just a matter of having those areas, you have to make them living every day, and that's a continuous effort. So in order to restore and maintain those areas, we plant yet another 700 native trees a day in 3 different biomes. So we work in Mata Atlântica, Cerrado, and the Amazon. This is actually a huge effort of regeneration in which we select diversified species of trees that are native to each of those 3 biomes, and we plant them and allow just nature to do its job in a technique that we know as assisted natural regeneration. What is also really great about this process is that all of the seedlings and the services that are provided to this effort, they come from local communities and NGOs that integrate, people and nature in this virtual cycle in which we all benefit. Suzano benefits because it's cheaper to hire these efforts locally, of course, and the community thrives as a whole. So it's a great benefit for everybody that keeps the conservation of our forests going and growing. This has proven to be very successful strategy. So we're sharing now this knowledge and learnings with multiple organizations and also small landowners who really want to engage in this conservation and regeneration. So I would say that sustainability is the very root of our business. It's actually the very way we think about it, and having this continuous cycles of 5 or 7 years, it really makes us thinking about the long term, about how can we live a better soil and a better environment 5 years from now, so that we can have better forests and more conservation and more generation of wealth and a better distribution as well.
Thank you, Marcela. So you make us proud, Brazilians all over the world, for the great work you do. And my love for trees, it's in the Bria images. I love trees, and I look for trees all around me, and they need water, John, right? To grow and be fruitful. So thank you for the great work the 2 companies do for the world. All right, so another thing I like to do, for those who know me, is I like to take the temperature in the room and see how our audience is feeling about this topic. So I'm going to go and read for you the questions of a poll that we're going to be asking our audience to take right now. So get ready to click and answer. We have begun with discussing the why. So let's see how you relate to the topic. So let's take the temperature here and see. is, so are you already familiar with the topic and apply ESG to your organization? Click on number 1. If you are aware of the topic, but do not apply ESG yet, click on number 2. Now, if you're interested in learning more about ESG, click on number 3. And if you have never heard of ESG before, click on number 4. So let's see how our audience fits here. All right, lots of people applying ESG already. Some are not applying yet, and some are interested in learning. So I hope we will be promoting some learnings here, and also, you know, can share always with your friends. This is a topic that more and more people should know about. So awesome. All right, let's go to question number 2 here now. And it's regarding leadership. That's also something that we talk about at BRIA Institute a lot. And both John and Marcela, you lead in this intersection of air, water, land, ecosystems, now, which is the ultimate source of wealth and well-being to humanity. So let's go and dive a little deeper into the DNA of the companies and see how you're leading in your respective sectors, okay? What are your key priorities in terms of ESG? And has anything changed with the pandemic? So I'll start with Marcela, back to you.
Well, operating in the forest sector, we have always had very high ESG standards, but definitely becoming the global leader of the sector has brought an additional responsibility. So I think I connect that more with the leadership than I do with the pandemic, though it has definitely been an immense opportunity to show leadership beyond the borders of our company and our sector when we mobilized our people and resources to help society navigate the past 18 months or so. But coming back to ESG, with an impact that big, we now have this responsibility that actually transcends the role of managing businesses and creating jobs. So we believe that our role is actually to help society find solutions to its structural problems. We really believe in that. Also, we want to help Brazil assume this global leading role of environment and bioeconomy. We have all the resources to become environmental leader in this country, to pioneer the bioeconomy. So we believe that part of this task should be taken on by the private sector. And I have no doubt in my mind that the planted tree sector is one of the most relevant in this front. So in Suzano, we are working hard on topics that are of global interest, and we announced ambitious commitments to society that need to be attained by 2030. So to give you 3 examples out of 13, we are committed to replacing plastic and oil-based products with the supply of 10 million tons of products obtained from renewable resources. We are also committed to mitigating the problem of income distribution, so making it possible for 200,000 people to rise above poverty line in the areas where we operate, that also until 2030. And we are committed to become even more climate positive, removing an additional of 40 million tons of carbon from the atmosphere. That is around what São Paulo city emits in 2 years. So it's pretty big, it's a lot. Suzano is one of the few companies globally to have achieved this carbon negative status by 2019. So we can say that we are a global leader in combating climate change. And a huge challenge here also is actually to embed the ESG across all levels at the company's culture. So we have linked the variable remuneration of our directors and managers to the development and delivery of at least one of these goals that I was mentioning, the 13 goals that I was mentioning, in the area of operation of this either director or manager. And that includes all of Suzano's leadership. So I think when we look at these bold commitments, of course, we are pursuing to be transparent and also to disclose our achievements and our challenges, which is a huge deal already, but also we want to help raise the bar, of our sector, of the business community, of society as a whole. So this is a clear commitment to spearhead the protection of natural habitats while having a positive impact on society and societal change. So that's I think, our priorities, to be able to achieve those long-term goals, as well as to provide, real impact and real transformation in society.
Thank you, Marcela. So John, key priorities and what has changed with the pandemic?
Thanks, Dree. And thank you, Marcela. I learned a lot from listening to your remarks. And also I have to compliment your background. I don't know if it's real, but it looks perfect. I wish I could make my office look like that. A little color, some plants. It's really remarkable.
It's real. It's my office. I'm here every day now, right? So
wow.
We need to decorate it.
It's beautiful and very clean. So Dree, Suez, you've read a little, I think, blurb from our website about our commitment to sustainability. And until recently, our corporate slogan was leading Suez, leading the resource revolution. And so we're really totally committed to helping the world move from a linear economy to a circular one. We play in that in two main areas. One is, I talked about water treatment. We take a lot of wastewater and recycle it that can be reused for even things like growing, for agriculture, growing trees. And the second thing we do is waste management. And when I was kind of giving the history of Suez a little bit, how we've always been a sustainable company at heart, we started building water and wastewater treatment plants in the 1880s. Well, in the early 1900s, as cities got even bigger and started generating more waste, we began to collect that waste and bring it to facilities to treat it. And today we separate it, we recycle as much as we can, we convert some of it into energy. Waste, solid waste is a source of methane gas, which is a really difficult greenhouse gas. So we try to kind of mitigate the greenhouse gas emissions by converting all of that to energy. I think when the Paris Agreement took place, we and a lot of other companies I mentioned probably formalized our approach to sustainability. We have a very rigorous approach, and Marcela, I bet you use a similar approach at Suzano, but we start with a materiality analysis where we pulse about 4,900 stakeholders from governments and NGOs and think tanks and our customers. And we ask them, what do you think is important? What do you want us to focus on in terms of ESG? And then we take all of those inputs and we map them on a 2x2 matrix. So importance to our stakeholders on one axis, and then Suez's ability to drive impact on another axis. And those that are in the upper right quadrant, that's what we focus on from an ESG standpoint. And right now we have 9 priorities in that upper right quadrant. And they're things like, women's access to management positions. And then Marcela, I heard you mention how I think your leadership's compensation is in some ways tied to sustainability. Well, our compensation at Suez is also tied to a variety of factors, and one of them is access of women to leadership positions. So, if you want A, reward A. It's simple management by objectives. It tends to work. But other things we're focused on are ethics, energy consumption, greenhouse gas emissions, water and waste management optimization, and digital solutions. And Dree, I think we've also said in 2020, so it's just a year, we're year 1 of 10 into this, because we set a 10-year objective in 2020 to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 45%. But on the water side of things, we're really focused on taking wastewater and treating it so it can be reused. And that's because we've talked about this before, but there are about 2 billion people in the world who live in areas that are short of water. And one of the ways to really help them is to take this wastewater that's not being treated today and treat it so they can be reused. Agriculture globally is the largest user of water, so you can use this wastewater to grow crops or trees. You can use it for power plants. You can use it for drinking water reservoirs. So that's an area we've really been pushing. And then the new area is Suez has formed a global business unit called Smart Environmental Solutions, and it's focused on deploying digital solutions to make communities run their water and energy systems more efficiently, and waste management. And so that's an area of focus too. So, and then I think just to answer your question on COVID, and did you want to know how COVID impacted all of this?
Yeah, so anything changed with the pandemic?
I think the only thing that changed is it made us reemphasize everything we're doing, because during COVID height, I mean, if you look back at the Spanish flu, which was at 1918, the advice then was wear masks and wash your hands. And things really haven't changed that much, with the current pandemic. But washing your hands is, whereas it's easy for someone like you or me, it's not easy for everyone. So that was an area of focus, and largely philanthropically, to try to enable more people to have access to clean water stations, so they could do that. One of the things we did was we made donations to charities around the world. One of those built a number of fresh water facilities in a slum in Nairobi, Kenya. But I just say our core principles are human health and hygiene, and during COVID, they became more in focus than ever before.
Yeah, so health is in the top of the agenda, and you start with water, and you start with taking care of how we manage everything, and from our plantations to our organizations to our families and everything else. So it is so paramount to have that in mind, and have technology. We're going through this fourth industrial revolution. So how can we get the power of the evolution in technology to also sustain life in a more regenerative way? So that's what you're doing, and I applaud you for that, both Suez and Suzano, in the person of John and Marcela. So back to the questions. I usually say that the obstacle is the way, just like the old philosopher used to say. So the life of a leader is not always easy, or like we say in Brazil, not only flowers. So my question to you now is, okay, it's hard to be a leader, but it's also good when you get some obstacle turned into resources, right? So what are the main challenges for you right now in terms of ESG, and what are the benefits that you might be able to address with collaboration? Because sometimes we can't do everything alone, and we can make sure to find ways in joining forces with everybody, right? So I'll start with Marcela. Marcela, so challenges and how you believe that you can make a difference there in your sector.
Great. Well, Dri, thanks for the question. And John, I will mention a little bit about diversity, and you'll see that there is definitely something that is linked to our executives' remuneration, and we need to work so much harder in that, and I'll talk about it, because actually it's always difficult to deal with our imperfections, right? So disclosing and discussing controversial issues such as water, for example, with the right level of depth and with a wide and broad range of stakeholders is definitely a challenge. We have also heard many different stakeholders in our process of designing the sustainability strategy that led at the end of the day to our long-term goals. And it's really not easy, to be open to listen, to engage in conversation, and mostly to incorporate different views. And that has been an intense exercise, and we're very far from ready. We're still learning from this experience. I also want to mention prioritizing, because I feel that we still want to embrace a lot of challenges. I mentioned it's 13 challenges, and we're about to launch our 14th long-term goal that is connected to biodiversity. I can still tell you that we're going to launch it on June 25th in our E.S.G call. So it's a lot of initiatives, and it's really not easy to keep them all on track. So among the goals that we're not happy with, for instance, is the D&I effort, diversity and inclusion. In this field, we recognize that we need to do much more. And by 2030, the company has pledged to have 30% of its leadership positions held by women, and also 30% will be from underrepresented ethnicities. This will be achieved through implementing mentoring programs, raising awareness internally, expanding the pool of candidates. But I can tell you that after 1 year of hard work, we're still too far from that objective. We have moved forward with the debate and implementing, a series of initiatives through our affinity groups. I'm the leader of one of them, of the gender equality group. But we are right now rediscussing what else can we do, to move faster. So it has been a real tough exercise. And you mentioned the regeneration front and collaboration. So alongside the forestry activity, we have been promoting what we call in Suzano innovability, which is basically the innovation applied to sustainability. So I'll give you a few examples, but definitely partnering with large companies and startups worldwide has been our way to develop new products and new solutions that can use our trees instead of fossil materials such as textiles. I'll give you some examples. For instance, in textiles, the company has developed a new fiber in partnership with a Finnish startup called Spinnova. This fiber uses a production method that, compared, for example, to cotton and viscose, it reduces the volume of water and chemicals by at least 54%. And in some cases, when you don't use coloring, for example, it can reduce water and chemicals by 100%. So it's probably the most sustainable fiber in the world that we're starting to produce right now. It also reduces CO2 emissions by 60%. So that's a huge bet of the company. In the biofuels front, for example, Suzano is working with global oil majors to develop some sort of a biopetroleum solution that will reduce levels of pure petroleum fuel. So that's pretty big also in emissions. We are committed to making more sustainable alternative to plastic products, and for that we have been joining efforts with several partners because as you said, we can't do this alone. Also on the paper front, for instance, I know we usually think about paper in terms of printing and writing paper, but we're continually improving the properties of our paper products to make them more resistant to water, to fat, heat, oxygen, so that they can be more broadly used in the food business, and again substitute other sources that usually come from petroleum. And that means a lot of laboratory and industrial tests, which we also do in a very collaborative way with our clients and partners. So collaboration has been paramount for us. Also digital transformation. We have been managing now to gather data and understand that data all the way from the forest to the industrial plants and to logistics when we deliver our products to our clients in a way to be more efficient and generate more value while using less resources. So those have been very strong actions here at Suzano lately.
Beautiful. So both of you mentioned a challenge being diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we know that this is a photo taken from the corporate world more largely and more broadly. This is a problem every company in the world faces, every organization does. So it's a movement that is only starting. And you both mentioned technology, innovation, in finding ways, and the intersection of the initiatives, the solutions. So it's like very, very clear that we need to move from linear to more systemic and integrating not only the topics, but the areas within the company and having the metrics around that for talent for the senior leadership, for all leadership actually, is amazing. So John, your turn, challenges. And so what are some aspects of regeneration that your respective sectors, you can see they're emerging at Suez and the work you do?
Thanks, Tree. Well, you know, I've touched on water reuse before, which is really how you regenerate wastewater into fresh water. And it makes all the sense in the world, and it's far less expensive than desalinating water. And the issue is that the world is reusing very little of its wastewater, in part because water is so inexpensive. And I don't know what it's like, Marcella, or what the water situation is in Brazil, but and I'd be interested in hearing from you at some point. but in a lot of places in the world, even in the U.S., you know, big companies can take water from the ground sometimes. They don't pay for it, or from a river where they don't pay for it, or even a municipal drinking water system where the tariffs are pretty low. So it's hard to convince them to implement water reuse technologies, you know, to spend the money to make a more sustainable system. So Dream, that's where we've kind of tried to connect with governments and explain, hey, there are things you can do as governments. There are policies you can put in place to promote greater reuse. And we try not to, you know, have governments force companies or communities to reuse water, but we try to say, hey, you can create incentives to do that. So that's an area I think that we've been focused on, trying to get governments to come in and promote more reuse, and just a kind of almost a reporting thing, just shifting gears. And again, Marcel, maybe it's the same for you, but I think we find it challenging. You know, there's so many organizations out there that report on ESG for companies. So you have to, and I think they're trying to consolidate and harmonize rationalize what they're doing. And that would be very helpful when there could be one kind of report you do. And the kind of the standards or metrics and definitions of ESG metrics can be all over the board. So I think rationalizing that reporting kind of part of the universe would be very helpful as well.
Right, and I remember, John, back then when we worked together, that also clarifying things so that we can have this harmonization. So science with the facts can be very powerful. Communication, creating the narratives and allowing the conversations to happen, but making sure everybody sits around the table. So the three of us come from a background of government affairs, and we grew in our careers talking to governments about specific issues. And I believe that now more than ever, we need this ability to connect, to bring together around the topic for conversation, for reflection, for integration of initiatives, so we can create synergies and we can promote better and integrated impact all around us. So not only to do our daily jobs, but to make sure this orchestration happens in a more successful way. So John, I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit more on this, some specific collaboration that you're promoting right now with governments around the world. So you have been doing that for a long time, and there must be something that is so important for people to be aware of. So if you want to share, please.
Yeah, thank you, Drew. I'd like to mention three things. One is in India last year. You know, India is having horrible water scarcity, and so we did release a white paper, a report, kind of giving India a menu of policy options it could implement to help address water scarcity by creating more sustainable water systems in the country. That's a model that can be used in other places of the world. The World Bank provided some input in that report. So did some environmental think tanks like World Resources Institute. Also, there's a new initiative that I really love, and it's called the 50 Liter Home Coalition. And it just launched in late October, so it's a few months old. Oh, I guess it's 6 months old now, 7, okay. And it's a coalition of 9 organizations: the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, Procter & Gamble, Suez, and a handful of other organizations. And the idea is to create a home that's water efficient and energy efficient. So kind of the home of the future. And we just hired an executive director. He's based in Switzerland. He came from the Rockefeller Foundation, where he was the resilient cities leader. And we're just kind of getting off the ground, but we're going to try to pilot this concept in 4 communities around the world. So somewhere in China, somewhere in India, in Mexico City, and in Los Angeles, here in the US. And I think that's a really fun initiative. And I'd encourage people to go on the website and just Google 50L Home Coalition. That's a fun one. And Marcella, I just want to mention for you, I don't know if you guys are involved, but there's something called the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. And I heard you mention how you're trying to deplasticize your business in some ways. And this has become a huge coalition. It's formed by a lot of the oil and gas companies, Exxon and Shell are involved, ExxonMobil and Shell, but companies like Suez are involved too. And how do we kind of take plastics out of the equation to protect the oceans and just the environment in general? So that's something you could also Google AEPW, Alliance to End Plastic Waste. So those are two collaborations, Dri, I just wanted to mention.
Good. And we do need to move faster in the energy transition space. So the collaboration will allow us not to look fragmentedly by sector, but more integrated, and how we can even get knowledge shared from different areas of knowledge. I totally believe that biology needs more, to be included in the mix, not only chemistry, physics, so understanding concepts of quantum mechanics and whatnot, but the biology of living systems, so important. So I'm sure that these initiatives will provoke conversations like that, John. Thank you. Marcella, any example of collaboration you'd like to highlight that you think is important for leaders to know about?
Yeah, definitely. And John, thanks for the examples. I think it's great. We don't usually have any plastics in our productive chain right now, so we are much more on this end of offering alternatives, to plastics, other than actually engaging on what to do with plastic waste, because hopefully, luckily we don't generate any, but it's a very strong initiative. And I know of some companies here in Brazil that are connected to this alliance, Braskem, for instance. And I mentioned a few initiatives on collaboration that we have with partners, especially to produce, products that can be alternatives to plastics and fossil fuel origins. But one thing that I haven't mentioned is the alliances that we have here in order to preserve the Amazon, for example. That has been a huge agenda for Brazil. And one initiative that we're very proud here of is in the Brazilian Council for Sustainable Development, SEBEDES. We gathered, a lot of businessmen and companies to write down a letter to the government to really pressure the government to end by 100% illegal deforestation in the Amazon. We really believe that that's an agenda that is a global agenda. It's very important for us. And we have all the resources, as I mentioned before, we have all the resources to become, this potency on the environmental field. And there's really no reason for us to lag behind that. So we really feel for the bad reputation that Brazil's facing now in this environmental agenda, because we understand that we could be on the other side of the story, offering solutions, offering a way to offset emissions, offering, new solutions for bioproducts to this bioeconomy. But we have been partnering with a lot of companies and with the government as well to provide solutions for the deforestation in the Amazon. So that's one that we're very proud.
Yes, and again, we are systems. So the smaller systems have parts that interact, and the sum of the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. But the smaller systems are part of the bigger systems, and they also suffer the spillover effects. So it's important to act in both dimensions, the smaller systems, within the organizations, the communities we're in, but also the larger systems. So the collaborations that you're mentioning here in the larger systems are so important, because culture cannot be changed from top down only. It has to be bottoms up. But somewhere in the middle, we can meet and meet halfway, right? So we have beautiful questions here from our audience, and one ties in with the culture aspect of it. So let me start by asking here and reading here the questions we received from Viviane Mansi. So Viviane Mansi, she says, I'm responsible for sustainability for Toyota in Latin America and Caribbean. I would like to ask to Marcela, it was great to listen to you about culture. What good practices do you suggest for companies who want to do the same and need to increase understanding and leadership involvement in ESG issues?
Well, thank you, Vivi, for the audience and for the question. It's a pleasure to know that you're here with us. Well, I really believe that some measures need to come top down. So they definitely, the system should work bottom up, but this sort of thing sometimes have to come top down. So one thing that we have already mentioned here, John and I, is to have the sustainability goals linked to variable remuneration of the executives. Honestly, I don't know of other faster way than that to really drive sustainability inside of the company culture. I also believe, I mean, in our case, and I think it's the same with Suez, we really have sustainability intrinsic to our own, business model. So that has always been an easy subject to talk about and an easy subject to get employees engaged in. I mean, for sure, and that's historically. I've been with Suzano for 13 years, and I know that even before that, that was already a hot topic in the company. But still, to make that on a daily basis something important for the executives, it really has to be tied up, with remuneration. I think that that's the first thing. And another thing that I found really powerful is actually having those public goals, having goals, commitments to society, and disclosing that and giving transparency to what has been your journey to attaining those goals, because that really keeps the movement, flowing. You have to look at your goals, once in a while, see how they're going, understand what you have to do, which ones have to move faster, and that really keeps the company going and flowing towards this direction. So I think having clear goals and disclosing that to society in a very transparent way, that's very powerful. And also connecting that to the remuneration of the executives, that's also a very, very, sharp and fast way to connect and to disperse this culture into the company.
Yeah, when I hear leadership, I hear not only telling people what to do, having a vision and telling people what to do, but it's holding by the hand and say, let's go from here to here together, right? So it's both bottom up and top down together, meeting halfway. John, any insights on this question from Viviane you would like to offer? You're on mute.
No, I agree with everything Marcela said, and I just have nothing to add to it. Make public commitments, which companies, want 100% say-do ratio, and align compensation with objectives. So anyway, perfectly said.
Thank you, John. We have another question here that is similar, but it looks slightly different. Let's read from Paula De Angeli. Thank you, Paula, for the question. So how easy or difficult was it to embed ESG principles across Suzano and Suez, in particular as related to employee and leadership buy-in? So the leadership buy-in we talked about a little bit, but how easy or difficult was it? When thinking about ROI, the resistance can be big, and in certain instances, employee indifference can get in the way. So anybody wants to start? John?
I'll just start and say, Dri, that first of all, GE deserves lots of praise for being an early leader in the ESG world. That was kind of a courageous decision by Jeff Immelt, who was the CEO of GE then. And I know that his board, they didn't say don't do it, but they pushed back and asked, well, how does this foot with, finance, right? With shareholder profitability. And he had to answer those questions. But if I look today, I think the world has changed since then in a lot of ways, and people realize that operating sustainably, is key to shareholder profitability. I would just say that at Suez, I see no evidence of any concern on the part of employees or senior leadership or anyone about ESG commitments. I mean, I just think it's so baked into the DNA of the company that it's an easy, I keep speaking in cliches, but it's an easy foot into the shoe, So anyway, I think it was a tougher sell when GE was doing it in 2004, 2005, and today it's kind of everyone's on board 100%.
And I would just like to add that Jeff writes very well in his book Hot Seat about this topic. So anybody who is interested in learning how it is to be a big leader in a big pair of shoes and making this happen should read his book, especially chapter 5 that talks about eco-imagination and being a systemic leader. So thank you for reminding us of that, John. Marcela, any further comments here for Paula?
Yeah, I'm fully on board with what John just said. Just to bring another angle, maybe Suzano has been a family-owned and then family-controlled business for many years. It was family-owned until the early 2000s, and then it was family-controlled up until 2019 when we effectuated the merger with Fibria. But it has been a professionally managed company for many years. But I still feel that the family business vision, it's still embedded in the company in a way that family businesses, they really don't think about trimesters or annual reports. They're much more thinking to generations and generations to come. Like literally, our chairman of the board, David Pfeffer, he always says that, and I work for him, so I can say that it's true. He thinks like 100 years ahead of us. So that has a very strong intake in the company, So I really don't, I'm with John here. I don't feel any employee resistance. As I mentioned before, it has always been very easy to talk about sustainability. And I truly believe that it's totally embedded in our DNA. But I think it has a lot to do with this thing of being family owned and having, this generation and long-term view that I know that is, not every company has that. So I feel very lucky to be on this environment.
And we have a comment here from Susana Padua saying, thank you for such a great panel. I do believe that examples like these need to be shared to inspire other companies and initiatives, for sure. Lots of inspiration here today. So let me, again, I love to make it as interactive as you can with our audience. So let me take another poll here. Let's take another temperature here to see. So let's see how we are feeling about the conversation here today. So based on the conversation here today, let's see how you're feeling. So I already knew about the great work Suez and Suzano have been doing. Click on number 1. I knew somewhat of the stories, the cases shared, but I certainly learned a lot or something new today. And I will stay tuned for more best practices from Suez and Suzano and how I may join forces in terms of ESG topics that they advocate for. And the winner is number 3. They all want to stay tuned for more best practices from Suez and Suzano and see how they can join forces. That's beautiful. That's an example of collaboration right there. I love it. I love it. So as we wrap up, I know this is awesome and I would stay here forever with the two of you talking, but let's think of a positive message that we can share so we can inspire our audience. Again, we are in the middle of a huge transformation in the way we do business in the world. This pandemic has been a wake-up call for us all that we have to move towards regeneration and more health, wellness faster. So this is so systemic. I like to quote systemic thinkers all the time, and one that comes to my mind is Humberto Maturana, who passed recently. He's from Chile. He's a doctor, biologist, philosopher who left so many learnings for us. And one that is particularly in my mind as I hear you both speak is the difference between change and transformation. he says that change is like going in a different direction or doing something completely different. But transformation is about conservation. It's conserving something in just a different form or different circumstances. So like when you also give your final messages here, I'd like for you to say or help us reflect upon, in this transformation we're going through, what is it that we want to conserve? Because he seems to say that if we are clear about what we need to conserve, the rest will change around it. So we will make something better out of it. So final remarks here from the two of you. I'll start with Marcela.
Yeah, well, Dri, I think, well, first of all, thank you both so much for this experience. I learned a lot from our exchange, and really, I can't wait for our next talk. It can be offline, John, if we don't make it here again so soon. And well, to finish, I think collaboration is key. We've talked a lot about that here, and I think collaboration is natural. It's from our nature, right? We are human beings are the most successful species in the planet because we are the species that can better collaborate. So I think that has to be conserved, above all interests. I think that has to be conserved. And I'll just like to say, I think as much as we have advanced in commitments and raising awareness, I feel that this big goal of becoming carbon zero by 2050 and other goals that go with that's not enough. We need to pursue new narratives. We need to pursue narratives that reconcile profitability with regeneration. I think Suzano is one example of business where more growth means more regeneration, and Suez is the same way. And I think sometimes we need to not only do, but to show what we're doing and to show to the market. For example, we had to link sustainability to our capital structure. So that's a way of also doing that. But I know that there are many other examples out there, and these stories need to be told. So I think that's the invitation, right? Let's tell the stories, the successful stories, the stories that are bringing us forward. I think that's very important that we can share that. And thank you again so much for being here with me today. It was great being with you.
Thank you for sharing the beautiful story of Suzano and of Marcela in Suzano doing great work. John, your final words.
Okay, very, very short time, so I'll be very fast. Dri, first of all, Marcela, I agree completely. Humans love to collaborate, and cooperation is the basis for all civilization. And maybe it's because we all come out of a government affairs background. I think there's more that governments can do. I know individuals do some things in their homes. I know corporations do things with their sustainability programs. But I think governments, at very little cost, can take steps that will promote even more sustainability. I think they can celebrate sustainability and a part of corporations and communities. They can give out awards, for the best corporate sustainability programs, the best city sustainability programs. And I know that the city of Los Angeles recently announced it's going to recycle 100% of its wastewater in the next 15 years. I mean, I think more announcements like that, that's what's going to move the needle and change the world. So I think governments can kind of step up and play an even bigger role than they do today. Anyway, Dri, it's always so great to see you. And my new friend, Marcela. I hope we're friends.
I'm sure you are. Thank you, John. That's amazing. I want to conserve the dialogue, the reflection, the collaboration. So it's a pleasure to have you. And I want to end with an invitation for everybody to join us at the BRIA Institute for more of that. We are going to be offering more conversations like this because this is what fuels us, nourishes us. And if you want to learn more about applying systems thinking to business, to your organization, to your life, join us for the CEO Meet and Master program. This is where we hear what's happening in the C-suite, but we practice as leaders how to apply systems thinking in our daily tasks with our challenges, transforming our obstacles into resources. So join us. We have two groups coming up this year, September and November. It'll be a pleasure to have you. but just follow us on social media, be with us in the next webinars, and re-watch this as we post the recordings of this wonderful conversation with John Friedman and Marcelo Porto here today. So thank you so much, you guys, for being with us, for the great work you do. Keep the great work with Suzano and Suez, and let's meet together soon, because I want more of this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Obrigado.
Thank you, John.
Obrigada, John and Marcela.